President Trump is denying a report that his campaign funds are dwindling, but also said he would do whatever it takes to secure his re-election effort, even if it means financing his campaign himself.
We have much more money than we had last time going into the last 2 months. I think double and triple. But if we need it anymore, I'd put it up personally, like I did in the primaries last time. In the 2016 primaries, I put up a lot of money. If I have to, I'll do it here. But we don't have to because we have double and maybe even triple what we had a number of years ago, 4 years ago.
His comments follow a report by the New York Times that says his campaign has lost a significant cash advantage that it had over Joe Biden. Let's bring in CBS News campaign reporter Nicole Sganga. Hi there, Nicole. So the president is blaming at least some of his campaign spending on alleged disinformation related to the pandemic. What's he saying about that?
Absolutely, Elaine. Well, first we should point out that the president's campaign has fundraised over $1 billion since kicking off in 2017. And of that, they have spent well over $800 million. So I just want to make sure that we get the numbers out there. Now, the president telling reporters today outside of Air Force One that, in fact, the reason he spent so much money up front was because of disinformation, that he was trying to counter Democratic narratives around his handling of the coronavirus pandemic. We should point out that in some of those early campaign ads, the president actually featured Democratic lawmakers heralding him for his coronavirus response very early on back in March and April. And what is sort of unorthodox about some of the campaign spending that we've seen from the president's reelection bid is that typically you wait until perhaps after the Republican National Convention or the Democratic National Convention to ad blitz. But this president did the exact opposite, spending over $100 million on television advertisements alone prior to the GOP convention. That included dropping $10 million on two 30-second spots that aired at the Super Bowl earlier this year. Now the president saying that he's confident they have what they need to last them through November and up until Election Day. But certainly Trump campaign aides tell CBS News privately that they are feeling that cash crunch.
So it is really remarkable to hear you, Nicole, talk about those numbers. So 5 months ago, the president had a nearly $200 million cash advantage over Joe Biden. You just laid out where a lot of those funds went for the Trump campaign. What did Joe Biden do to close the gap?
Well, it took Joe Biden about 3 months to close that fundraising gap, and he relied primarily on Zoom fundraisers. We saw him fundraising virtually, and that gave him the ability to hop from Zoom conference to Zoom conference, soliciting, thousands of dollars from individual donors who really supported the Democratic nominee once he joined the Democratic National Committee and became the, nominee, not officially, but of course the prospective nominee back in April. And so we saw Biden starting to build up momentum. Ironically, the Trump campaign really criticized the former vice president during that period of time for, quote unquote, hiding out in his basement. But he was hiding out in the basement, raising quite a lot of cash, which is now being used for campaign ads. Listen to this. Just in the last 2 weeks of August, Mr. Biden's campaign outspent President Trump's campaign on television, investing $35 million on ads, compared with just $4.6 million that President Trump's campaign spent on ads. We should also point out, Elaine, that you mentioned earlier some of the Trump campaign spending was a little bit dubious. The Trump campaign has done things like invested $1.2 million in television advertising in Washington, D.C. As we know, the District of Columbia is solidly blue. Many campaign aides and Republican operatives speculate that that money was just put here in Washington, D.C. so the president could see himself and his campaign on TV. They spent $17 million in legal consulting fees. They funneled $226 million through a company linked to current and former Trump campaign officials called American-made media consultants. They use this to place television ads, digital ads, and make payments to Lara Trump and Kimberly Guilfoyle, two senior officials who are also the partners of the president's sons. And so a lot of campaign expenses here that raised eyebrows among campaign aides prior to Brad Parscale, the former campaign manager's ousting back in July.
Well, we know President Trump is working with a new campaign manager now. How does Bill Stepien plan on reining in spending?
Well, we were on a phone call today with Bill Stepien, the new campaign manager, who said that one of his #1 priorities is budgeting. And some campaign aides like to tease him that he keeps a whiteboard at his office at campaign headquarters in Arlington. And on it, he calculates line by line the Trump campaign budget. And Bill Stepien has been clear about some of the changes that he's made so far. Less campaign aides traveling with the president. We know that over 100 people went to that notorious rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma in June. Less campaign aides have been traveling with the president to these campaign events since then. But he's also been dialing back some of that ad spending, making more targeted approaches to some of the states that we've seen voting early so far. We should point out that the Trump campaign is going to kick up some of their spending in places like Georgia, Florida, North Carolina, and Arizona in the coming days that tend to see more than half of the electorate vote early prior to Election Day. And of course, we know in North Carolina, folks are already sending in their absentee ballots. So Bill Stepien trying to make the argument here that he is spending smarter, not bigger.
All right, Nicole Sganga reporting from the White House today for us. Nicole, thank you very much.
Thanks, Elaine.